If you're thinking about moving to Toronto, you've probably Googled some version of how expensive is Toronto, and what you got back was a mess. Headlines about crazy rent, don't get me wrong, it is expensive. TikToks about $18 lattes, people online arguing about whether Toronto is even livable anymore. But none of that actually helps you answer your real question, which is what would it cost you to live in Toronto? In this video, I'm gonna walk you through the real cost of living in Toronto, not just rent or home prices, but everything that goes with it. I'm gonna use actual current numbers for renters, buyers, single people, and families, so you can decide whether Toronto makes sense for you before you even pack a single box. So the first chart we're going to take a look at is rental costs, and I broke it down fairly simply. There's obviously a lot of different categories that you could look at in terms of, what it is that you're going to rent, but I looked at 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments, 3-bedroom semi-detached, and 3-bed detached homes, both 2 stories, just to kind of keep it simple. And I looked at 2025 medians. That's the whole year. So I wanted to smooth things out. There's a fair amount of seasonal variability with rentals. Typically, you'll find cheaper rent in the winter than if you're moving in the spring or kind of like late summer gearing up into the fall. So just kind of bear that in mind, but I wanted to use the annual values just to try and smooth some of that out. The median for 1-bedroom apartments is $2,200. For 2-bedroom apartments, you're looking at $2,650. For a 3-bed semi, it's $3,850, and I was actually surprised to see that the number for a 3-bed detached home isn't that much more than a semi at $3,896. Now, trust me, these numbers can get much higher. They can also get lower. I just helped somebody rent a 1-bedroom apartment at Yonge and Eglinton, at like a real bedroom with a door that can close and everything like that, and it's on an outside wall, so you've got a window in your bedroom, and she's paying, I think, $1,950 moving in February. So a lot of variability here, but these are like your typical numbers for those 4 categories. So the next chart we're going to take a look at is purchasing. Same 4 categories: 1, 2-bedroom apartments, 3-bed semi, 2-bed detached, and took a look again at the 2025 median values. For a 1-bed apartment, or 1-bed condo, I should say, it's come down quite a bit over the past couple of years. We're down to almost $510,000, about $679,000 for a 2-bed. And then for a semi, and there's a big jump here, obviously, for a semi-detached, you're looking at a little under 1.2 million, so 1,168,000. And for a detached, you're looking at about 1.4 million, 1.42. Now, what I did for these monthly costs over here on the right column is taking just the minimum down payment, and I used a 4% interest rate. That's where I got these values from, just taking a look at these purchase values and then applying those criteria to get a monthly value. So you're looking at let's call it $2,650 for a 1-bed, about $3,500 for a 2-bed, about $5,900 a month for that semi, and about $6,400 for the detached. Up next would be the land transfer taxes. Some of you who maybe aren't from Canada are looking at this and going, what? So we have a tax that applies to buyers who are purchasing real estate of basically any kind. It's a tiered tax. So the more you pay for, like in purchase price, the more you pay in the tax. And Toronto is lucky enough to have its own land transfer tax. I believe it's the only municipality in the country that has its own tax if you're buying within the city. There's also a provincial land transfer tax. If you're buying in Toronto, you're essentially paying 2 land transfer taxes, and they're basically the same amount. So if you look at this chart, you'll see that this is the municipal, or the Toronto version, Toronto amount. This is the provincial, the Ontario amount. You see how those 2 numbers are exactly the same, and you just add them together and you get the total. Now, here's the big issue with land transfer tax. You can't mortgage this. You can't break this down into a monthly payment. That is lump sum dollars that you need at or around time of closing, the time that you take possession of the property. So that's something that you're going to want to factor into your potential purchase plans. Chart number 4. Oh, look, another tax, but it's property taxes. I mean, everybody pays property taxes pretty much everywhere. And Toronto, in terms of a property tax rate, is actually quite low for the province, and comparatively speaking to even places that are fairly close by within, 40, 60 minute drive. But the problem is Toronto's real estate values are kind of high. It's a little bit of a wash. But what I did is I based these values, these are annual property taxes for, again, those same 4 housing categories, and then I broke it down into monthly costs in the right column here. The mill rate, or the typical rate for property taxes in Toronto, is about 0.75%. It's like 0.75 and then a whole bunch of digits afterwards, percent. That is based on what's called the assessed value. The assessed value is quite often a much lower value than the actual market value for the property. And so instead of trying to figure out what the assessed value was for a typical 3-bed semi, what I did is I took the median purchase values from a few charts ago and then applied a rate of about 0.45%. So, based on market value, if you do the conversions, it's somewhere between 0.4 and 0.5%. So I just kind of did right in the middle, 0.45%. So, for example, that $509,788 for a 1-bed condo, I multiplied that by 0.45% to get that total annual amount divided by 12. That's how you get the monthly amount. So those are the values there for your property taxes for those 4 property types. So utility costs can't be ignored for a 1-bedroom apartment. I think it's fair to say that you would pay around $100 a month. Some places will have utilities included. Some places might not. They might be older. They might be a little more leaky. Depends on how much you use it. But, I did $135 for a 2-bedroom. For a 3-bed semi, I did $385. It goes way, way up because when you're living in a condo or an apartment, you're typically only responsible for hydro. Sometimes that's different. The newer the condo, that you have to pay heat, hydro, water. It sort of depends how it's broken down and how it's sub-metered. But when you're in a house, you have to pay heat, gas, water, and waste, like for your garbage to be picked up. So I factored in all of those things. 3-bed semi, probably around $385, and for a 3-bed detached, just because typically they're bigger, and you have one wall that is now exposed to the exterior instead of sharing it with your neighbor in a semi. So your costs are going to go up a little bit more, $500 for a 3-bed detached. So I added up all the housing costs total, and obviously there's a range, but if you're in a 1-bedroom apartment, it's anywhere from $2,300 to just a little over $2,900. If you're a 2-bed, it ranges from, let's call it $2,785 up to almost $3,900. A 3-bed semi is going to be anywhere from $4,235 up to $6,711. And then for a 3-bed detached on the low end, let's call it $4,400 a month, up to almost $7,500 a month. Those are just your shelter costs. You haven't eaten yet. You haven't gone on a date. You haven't paid for childcare, if that's a thing. So I'm going to try and go through those right now as well. So there's going to be a ton of variance depending on whether you're a single, a couple, whether you're a family of 4, and whether you are thrifty or whether you like to eat out a lot. Depends on your lifestyle. So please bear with me. Some people are going to be well outside of these, either on the low or the high end, but I did my best and admittedly used Gemini for some research. So groceries, single person versus a family of 4 is going to be a big difference. Dining and entertainment, one thing that I found was interesting and felt was accurate was that on the high end, your dining and your entertainment as a single person could very much be higher than what it would cost a family of 4, because you're single, or maybe you're a couple, but you don't have kids. You've got a little bit more freedom. You can kind of get out a bit more often. You're probably socializing more often. You're probably younger and you have kind of more energy and don't need to go to bed at 8:30 like some people do. And so, there can be a huge variance in the dining and entertainment range. As far as insurance goes, there's really a couple of different types, but for renter or home insurance, you're looking at anywhere from like $25 all the way up to $135 a month. For transportation, you could walk everywhere and maybe you just need a TTC pass, or you just kind of, pay as you go as far as using the subway and the bus and streetcars and stuff like that. But a monthly TTC pass is $150. But if you're driving a car, $500 or $600 a month between your insurance, your fuel, your maintenance on the car, those kinds of things, that's not unreasonable. Internet, you can get decent internet for $50 a month. If you're a family of 4, you might need a little bit more kind of, bandwidth and speed and stuff like that. Childcare, if you're a single person, could be $0. If you're a single parent, it could be you've got subsidized childcare, or maybe you have to pay privately and you're going up to $1,800, $2,000. That's what we were paying before this new $10 a day type thing kind of came in for the province. And for a family of 4, if you've got 2 kids and you're paying privately, it's $4,000 a month. That's no small amount. And then cell phones, $50 to $75 I think is pretty reasonable. And I put $50 to $100 for a family of 4. So for the grand totals, there's massive ranges. So I'll explain how I arrived at these numbers, because looking at a single person, you could be anywhere from like $3,100 all the way up to, and this is housing and all those other monthly costs that I went to, but $3,100 all the way up to almost $8,000 for a family of 4. $4,400 all the way up to like almost $15,000. So what I did is I went through and I added up the lowest cost for a rental, which was 1 bedroom, $2,200, and then added up all the like on the low end side of the chart, those numbers there, to arrive at this number right there. And then I did all the higher end ones on the other side and added up with maybe a 2 bedroom rental, because a single person might need a place to sleep, but then also like a home office if they're working from home or something like that. So that's how I arrive at that range for both the single people and the families. So I did the exact same thing with the families, just what's the low end kind of estimation, what's the high end of the estimation, went all the way up. Like a family of 4, plenty of family of 4s that are living in 2-bed, 2-bath condos. So that's why this is so low for a family of 4 on the low end of things, because they might be living in a 2-bed, 2-bath condo that they're renting, and then, being fairly frugal with all of their other costs. And so that's why that is what it is in terms of a lower end. So if you're looking at that with criticism, that's where that's coming from. There's no question Toronto is expensive, but if you're living in this city, here's what you get. One of the safest cities in North America, certainly for its size. Excellent education, excellent schools, and fantastic healthcare, which comes with being a Canadian. And I can speak on the education thing. I used to be a teacher, and I've taught overseas where the Ontario curriculum is used. It is a highly sought after curriculum in other parts of the world. Canadians tend to kind of poo-poo our own education system a little bit, but trust me, other parts of the world highly, highly value Ontario and Canadian curriculum in general. Toronto has walkable neighborhoods, pretty good transit access for a relatively new city, which has really only hit the map in the last kind of 30-ish years. Transit's not bad. Debatable, I know, but Toronto's a very green city. We have lots of parks and ravines and a transitioning, improving waterfront scene as well. And lastly, Toronto has one of, if not the best, strongest job market in the entire country. So if you're seriously considering moving to Toronto, this is the part where most people get stuck. It's not on whether they like the city, but it's whether the numbers actually work for their life. So if you want a second set of eyes on your plan, whether you're thinking about renting first or buying right away or just narrowing down neighborhoods, you can book a call with me below. I'll help you translate all these numbers into a real world strategy that can work for you and your move to the city. I'm Jamie Harnish. This is Toronto Home Search, and this is where you figure out if Toronto makes sense for you.